Hey guys, welcome to the Shin Pad Podcast. This is Vignesh, and as usual, joined by my friend Bala on the other side. And for this episode, we have a special guest with whom we are going to talk many things about cricket, women's cricket. He's a former Indian cricketer and also coach of the Indian women's national team. So to talk more about that, and he's also a very good storyteller. So we welcome Mr. W. Raman to the show. Sir, welcome to the Shin Pad Podcast.
Thank you very much for having me on the show, and I look forward to it.
Yeah, so we wanted to start on a relatively lighter note. We have seen you post tweets and photos on Insta of South Africa with a lot of affinity towards the country. You are also Centurion's first Centurion post apartheid in the white ball format. So from the YouTube clips we have seen of this 100 and the famous article written by Anand Vasu. So we couldn't help notice how the crowd enjoyed your innings, coming to the field with all Indian flags surrounding you. So not many Indians have achieved this feat till date. So could you tell us more about this innings and that particular day so that people from our generation may also know about that unique time in history?
Oh, that innings was played very, very long ago. So the memories might be really, really foggy. Nonetheless, what I remember of that was us being really down and out, almost 3-0 down. We were in a 7-game series and we needed to win the game to stay in the series. And also the fact that personally it was getting to a little bit of an irritation stage there because I was batting well. I was getting the 30s, 40s and it was not getting converted. So I was hoping that the next time I get to that 30, 40, I will make it count. And that particular game at the Centurion was quite tough in the sense that we were down, as I said earlier, 0-3, and then we were chasing, and it was always tricky those years to chase in South Africa because you can't really say that the light setup was the best in the world then, and it was tricky. But it was also an opportunity in the sense that we're chasing something like 214, 215. The scores would range anywhere between 200 to 240. That's how the pitches were, and that's the parameters that we had then, in the sense that the scores were not really anywhere close to 280, 300. So 214 as an opener and everything to play for in the sense that I didn't need to hurry by any means. But yet what happened was that towards the end it became a little bit tight. Ravi had to go and finish the job there. It was challenging. It was meaningful, and a century abroad, especially in a country where nobody knew nothing about, was something that you'd be satisfied with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Above all, it also went to a winning purpose. So that way, you couldn't have asked for a better cherry on top.
Yeah.
Also, continuing with South Africa, why have men's teams found it really tough to break the hoodoo and win a test series in South Africa? We have come closer than ever in 2010-11 when Tendulkar, Zahir Khan and MS Dhoni were in peak form. But why have we always found it difficult to cross that line and win the series? Because we have done it in Australia, England and New Zealand, but we haven't been able to do it in South Africa.
At times, when you are really wanting to cross the line, you will end up faltering somewhere. It could be only for a brief period, but that would prove to be very detrimental to the objectives. And that's exactly what happens at times. If you look at it, you need to be focused, but yet you need to be a bit relaxed. If you're a little bit overexcited about wanting to cross the line, if there's even a little bit of desperation creeping into your system, unwittingly as well. So what happens is that you don't end up doing what it is that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. And now that we have talked about your century, let's talk about your sixer, the winning sixer. So in your book, you have talked a lot about influential leaders and captains throughout the 10 chapters. Who are the influences in your life as leaders and personalities? How do you see leaders in the present day? Can you quote any impressive examples from cricket and also maybe from other walks of life?
I won't say that I was influenced greatly by any leader, because one of the greatest leaders or captains that Indian cricket has had is someone that I did not play under or play with, which was Tiger Pataudi. That is unfortunate, even though I had an occasion where I spent a couple of hours talking to him. That's one conversation I cherish a lot. And uh, as far as people having influence on my cricket or generally as an individual, there have been many along the way. But you would remember the people who were perhaps the first in the queue, or the first set of people who were to appear in your journey. And that is what you would remember. I think one of the main people who had an influence, or who I learned a lot from, was Venkatraman, the former Indian captain and also former Tamil Nadu captain. Of course, he did too many things in cricket for me to list out. Um, we had Kamal Hassan doing a Dasavadar movie, but I think Venkatraman much earlier did 10 roles in the field of cricket. So I think that credit goes to Venkatraman. So it doesn't matter. However, the thing was that I learned quite a lot of cricket from him, and also quite a lot of things about how to approach things, the kind of attitude you must have. Yes, a lot of people could not take the fiery outburst at times that came from him. But outside of that, or if you ignore that particular aspect of Venkatraman, I think he was a fabulous cricketer and a fantastic person as well. So he was one of them. And the other person who had quite a lot of influence and who also had a lot of genuine interest in my progress was the late Hanman Singh. Mm, I met him when I was in my school final, and he was the chairman of the national junior selection committee. He would talk a lot of cricket to me. He tried to gauge as to what kind of a person I was, and he would also try and subtly suggest that this is how I should be doing things instead of the way I was doing then. That I thought was fantastic, because normally people come and overbearing at times, and they try to insist that you do certain things, which, despite you trying hard, would not be possible, because it's very difficult to unlearn and learn something very quickly. So along those lines, he probably realized that you needed to try and guide rather than insist. That I thought was fantastic from him. And right through our lives, right through our lives, in the sense that until he was alive, I think he always was my well-wisher, and he always had a lot of time for me, despite all the um, peccadillos that he found in me. I think he tolerated me a lot. I'm grateful for him for that, as far as Anmol Singh is concerned.
Yeah, continuing with the topic of leadership and influential people, you've mentioned about the 5 C's a leader should possess, namely credibility, clarity, connect, control, and conviction in your book. Let us correlate this phenomenon with someone like Virat Kohli, because at the surface level, Virat looked at all. But apart from the test arena, we didn't taste consistent success in bigger tournaments. I mean, we can gauge success in whichever parameter we would like to, but at the end of the day, especially in sports, a leader, be it a captain or a coach, is always measured by their trophies. We don't know whether trophies are the right barometer for success, but that's how it has been done for a long time. So we would like to get your opinion on this whole thing.
As far as a leader and the qualities that a leader requires are concerned, I think Virat must have had most of them. It's just that all of us have those attributes in us. We'll have more of some and less of some. It's just a case of degrees as to how much do you have of each attribute at the end of the day. I'm sure that Virat would be the first to accept the mistakes that he's made whenever he felt it is in hindsight that he's made them. It happens. The one thing that people must understand about decision making is that every human being takes a decision based on the facts available at the time of having to take that decision. Eventually, he or she might be proved wrong, horribly wrong at times, but you can't help it. But as long as the thought processes are correct, as long as the intent is good, and if it is taken in the best interest of the team, and if it is taken with the resources available, and if it is taken taking into account all the things that each and every individual is capable of doing for the team. I think a leader has done a good job. Yes, you would get results sometimes. You may not get results most of the times, but it's all a case of what it is that you did in arriving at a certain decision. Was it whimsical or was it logical? Was it practical or was it a fantasy? This is what you got to try and assess when you reflect on your decisions that you made in the past. Each one of the leaders in any sphere of life would obviously assess everything and then evaluate the factors available at, at the point in time when a decision has got to be taken. And that is how they arrive at a decision. Yes, luck also plays a factor in all these things in terms of the results. That is something that you cannot really sort of cater for, account for. You can't go and buy luck somewhere. So that's how it is, especially in a game where a lot of variables are involved. So you can't do anything about it. Sport has its variables, sport has its share of human emotions coming into the sporting activities and having a major impact on the results per se.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We have taken a cue from your book and named the segment as Three to Tango. We wanted to know more about the communication between management and players. Has it improved in the recent years? Because as an outsider, we get to hear a lot of news that there's a huge communication gap. These days, more players are coming out and saying the same. So is it a good thing or a bad thing in your view?
See, everything needs to have a balance. It is good to have an open communication. It's good for everybody to have that freedom to talk and express their views. But it is also equally important as to how the channels are maintained. By that I mean that all the people, major stakeholders involved. When I say stakeholders, I'm talking about the captain, the selectors, and also the administrators, and also the players. So there are too many people involved here, and each one of them will see things differently, and each one of them may perhaps have different objectives. Yes, there are individual goals, there are team goals. So it is imperative that the the selection committee nominates one person who will be the contact point in discussions with the team management. In as much as the team management will obviously say X will be the one talking to Y, the representative of the selection committee. And that makes it very, very simple, because the more point is communicated through different channels and by different people, the more spin-offs you get. So then there's a very good chance of a lot of confusion coming in. I think that's what happens sometimes. Either the communication is too inadequate or it is excessive. It's a case of a communication being balanced, and it should also be something that it is liberal yet restricted. If you can achieve that balance, I think you will avoid a lot of confusion.
In one of your YouTube videos, you had hosted an extensive session on mental health. It was a wonderful conversation, which was a proper eye-opener for a lot of us. As someone who has undergone treatment for clinical depression, it's actually great to see more people talk about it in the public. And I've even loved how Virat Kohli and even Deepika Padukone have stressed upon it and tried to make awareness among the public. I think more people like them should be encouraged to talk about it. What do you think has changed in recent years, and what do you think needs to change, especially in sports where depression is still looked upon like a taboo topic?
I think there's a lot more changes that have happened in the society. The societal pressures or the societal stigma that was associated with anybody having a little bit of a mental health issue was something that a lot of people was one of the reasons perhaps for a lot of people ignoring to address that, or even accepting the fact that they needed help. Yeah. I think of late what is happening is that a lot of people are beginning to realize that is also a kind of ailment, like you have a physical ailment at times, a cough or a fever, or let's say anything else. So people have begun to accept that that is also a kind of health issue which has to be addressed. Otherwise, what used to happen in the 70s, 80s was that it's just that people were told that to get on with it. I've gone through this, so in comparison, what you're going through is obviously, something that is negligible kind of viewpoint would come if you approach somebody and said that you had an issue. And to be honest, also, this field was something that was really not familiar to many people in those bygone decades. I think it's only of late a lot of things have come in, a lot of awareness has come in about the fact that there are different branches of psychology. Psychology is different from the mental health kind of treatment that one has to undergo. So there's a lot of awareness, there's a lot of distinction between all these branches, be it psychology, be it the mental health side of it, however you want to look at it. You have to first be aware as to where you had to go, what you need to do. And I think is what my daughter Subiksha, who was a guest of the show, was trying to impress upon, because she's done 3 master's degrees in psychology in different fields of psychology. So that's what she was trying to impress upon. People tend to sort of club everything and use a generic term. So this is where the confusion, creeps in. It was a viewpoint, and I'm glad that a lot of people are now shedding whatever inhibitions they might have had in first accepting that they needed help, and then after accepting, going ahead with the next step of approaching somebody for help. So that perceived stigma that might be attached to you within the society or by the people in the society is something people are absolutely gotten rid of. And that's the reason you see a lot of people coming out with it and seeking help, which is fantastic.
Yeah, just to add to that point, what do you think needs to change? I mean, develop in sports, like from the management side to look after the players, because it is there in the national teams right now. We have a sports psychologist. In football, almost every club has a sports psychologist. But in the lower levels, like in the state teams and all the other small teams, what do you think needs to change? What should the managements of those sides do to, empower this process?
We all first need to know the exact meaning of the words or phrases we use, because I feel that most of the times that we tend to use a lot of phrases rather loosely. We talk about mental strength. If I were to ask somebody to describe mental strength, I don't think I'll get a very lucid answer. If I talk about sports psychology, if I talk about mental health issue, I don't think I'm going to find many people who will give me a proper explanation of those terms. So it does not serve anybody any purpose if we just go on using phrases very loosely. First, we have to ask questions to get it very clearly in our mind as to what exactly that particular phrase means, because these are very, very critical phases. Let's not, take it lightly. For example, in the field of sports, a trainer would come to me, for example, sorry, trainers, I'm not running you down. A trainer might come and tell me, I'm doing functional training. Suppose I were to ask him, boss, please tell me what is it that you mean when you say functional training? He needs to be able to explain. If he can't explain that, then it's a problem. Not only to the athlete, but also to the trainer himself, because the communication is absolutely a non-starter. So similarly, what needs to change is the fact that everybody needs to make it a point to try and find out what exactly the other person is conveying. There is no harm in saying, I don't know the meaning of this phrase. It's as simple as that. So that is what we need to do as individuals. And as far as help from the system is concerned, system cannot identify what help an individual needs, because all the individuals are products of their environment and products of the circumstances that they live in and they face every day. So the individuals will know better as to what is happening to them, what is happening around them, and what is triggering the responses that are being triggered within their system. And the other thing is that in the case of sports, a coach can only brush up or help an athlete or a cricketer or a footballer or a hockey player in terms of improving the technical skills. But in terms of the mindset getting better, in terms of the mental skills, complementing or enhancing the technical skills or helping the athlete perform to the best that he or she can, that mindset issue is only based on how an athlete feels. And as far as that particular aspect is concerned, it is the athlete who knows. No coach knows, no psychologist knows, nobody knows. Even the mental health specialist will only try and address whatever it is that you have to undergo or whatever you have to counter only when you come out and explain what it is that you're going through, which means the onus is on the individual to first understand his or her own mind, her own body, the workload that the body can take. All these things the individuals must make it a point to become aware of. So, if you had to ask me to explain in one word to your question, I would say awareness.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it, sir. Yeah. And we live in an era of social media. You always said that communication should be devoid of theatrics. How do you handle media and outside pressure? There is a beautiful example between Ravichandra Ashwin and Mr. Prasanna that you mentioned in your book. So, how do you handle all the situation? How is the relationship between players and media? Because right, media sometimes they quote something, people can easily misinterpret that. So, does a coach here play a huge role in soaking pressure from the media?
See, it's very simple as far as I see it. You establish a method of communication that is diligently followed. And you also establish parameters, even if it is done tacitly, that there are certain things that we can do, there are certain things that we cannot do. For example, during my days as a player, what would happen is that we would go on tours, the journalist as a group would travel to cover the matches. But yet, what would happen is at the end of the day's play or much later, generally you would tend to stay either in the same hotel or probably close by. So we would come across each other, but at no point in time we trespassed into each other's territory. By that, what I mean is that I would not try and foster a relationship with a view to try and ensure that he does not criticize me when I do badly. There were no ulterior motives. We both understood the fact that we had to do our jobs. He has traveled all the way to report based on what he sees and based on what we do. And he also understood that, yes, players also would obviously try their hardest on the field of play. And if it succeeds, it succeeds, doesn't succeed. Yes, that's where it started and ended as far as coverage is concerned. He was not bothered about what I went and ate, who I took out for dinner, what exactly it was that I was doing off the field. So both the sides knew, okay, we will be familiar, we both belong to the same country, yes, that is all where it started and ended. It's only when people start trespassing or violating each other's professional ethics and obligations and privacy, and both of them are operated with ulterior motives, then obviously there's no end to this nonsense. And then when things go out of control, there's no point in blaming each other or one side blaming the other completely. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Let us continue with coaching. You were the batting coach for KKR for a season, and you were also the assistant coach for the Punjab IPL team for a season. You're also the coach of two different Ranji teams. How different were these two things, like handling a Ranji team and handling an IPL team? Because in IPL, you just have 2 months, and within those 2 months, you would have to get to know everyone, and the season would end before you would be able to understand each and every individual. So, how did you forge relationships with players in such short spans? Whereas with the state teams, you had a good 8 to 9 months. So, how did you handle players in those teams?
One was a slow burn, and the other one was extremely contradictory in the sense It was all action-packed, 6 weeks or 8 weeks, or whatever the time frame was. So in one format, what you're trying to do is to try and help the players manage the emotional ebbs and flows, and also try and help them do better with quick fixes if it is possible. That's what you do in IPL. There's nothing much you're going to do as far as um, doing anything worthwhile in that 6 to 8 weeks of time in terms of enhancing their technical skills or whatever. It's just about trying to ensure that they're in a good space mentally, because there's no time for anything else. Because either you're playing a match, or you're training, or you're traveling. So there's hardly anything. And the players also have to be involved in a lot of commercial activities in between all this. So there's hardly any time for them, and it's even unfair to even broach on, getting a player to work on a specific thing in excess of all these things that they have to do with the team and with the sponsors and stuff like that. In terms of handling a state side, you got a lot of time. You can plan and set out to work with a view to achieving long-term objectives for the team and also for the players individually. So that is something that you have when you handle a state side. But yet what happens is you also have to know not to really sort of spend too much of time with the players, apart from the hours that you need to. Yes, you need to be available off the field for them, but you can't be, because if you're going to be interacting too much with the same set of individuals over a period of 9 months, that's exactly what is the time span of a season now for a state side. It can get a little bit testy, it can get a little bit edgy, and that might perhaps affect the team's performance towards the end of the season, which is where the prizes can be won. So you need to really periodize and also have to plan even the smallest of things, like the number of meetings that you have, the number of times that you would perhaps work on one particular individual. So everything needs to be planned, everything has to be worked out in such a way that you maintain a good, healthy balance in every which way possible.
Yeah. And threading upon the skills or abilities of a coach, how or why do you feel the art of convincing is important for a leader? For example, there was an instance that you narrated in many articles about Gautam Gambhir had to be convinced to move Robin Uthappa up the order, and he had to take the leap of faith. It worked to a great extent in the end. Can you elaborate on this? And also, have you ever come across an instance where when you couldn't convince someone of a method or approach? So how should someone or a leader deal with such situation?
As a leader, you try and point out what are the options that are available to the team or to an individual or to the captain. And your job is to try and do your best to convince them, to persuade them to do and see if it works out for the team. If for some reason the captain chooses not to do it, you got to respect it, because what happens is it's the captain who handles the players on the field. Now, you cannot even get into a kind of a situation where you have insisted upon the captain so much about one particular thing. It gets a little bit tricky to the extent that he tries to prove a point to you and does things which may be detrimental to the team. Yes, generally captains don't do that. But sometimes what happens is, if somebody were to insist on the same thing to you, you end up making a hash of things. So that is something that you'll have to avoid as a leader or as a coach of a team. And as well as helping and making an impact by way of convincing somebody or by way of persuading somebody, you need to understand that you should not really sort of try to help people when they are not keen to seek help. It's going to be falling on deaf ears. Players will come to you if they need help. Yes, you can try and subtly hint that they might have to work on something, but it's always better not to insist that certain thing is got to be done by an individual. If a player needs help, the player will approach you. Now, the important thing is that what do you do if he doesn't approach? Maybe he has somebody else who he thinks will be the most suitable person for him or her to approach. And now you'll have to bite that bullet. You can't say, no, I am the coach of this team. You got to come to me kind of thing. No, you can't. The classic example was Murli Vijay had come to the NCA when I was the head of NCA there. So first 2-3 days we didn't get to talk, and then fourth day he came and said, "Sir, come and have a look at me in the net size." In the distance, I happened to see Rahul Dravid there. He was not part of the NCA then. He had not become the head of cricket then. He had come to have a chat with Pujara because Pujara had invited him. So I said, no, forget me. I told Murli Vijay, forget me. Go and talk to that man. So he said, sir, I want you to come and have a look at me. Are you angry with me because I didn't come and meet you in the preceding 3 days? I said, no, you don't seem to have understood me even now after all these years. He said, no, I know, I'm just winding you up. I said, no, you go have a chat with Rahul Dravid for the simple reason you have gone through the first cycle of 40 test matches. Now he's gone through 4 cycles like that. So now go and talk to him about what challenges you will face from test matches 41 to 80. That is going to help you a lot. Me coming and watching you bat in the nets can be done any day. Because I got to be here. When you come here, I have no other option but to come and have a look at you if you think I should come and watch. So then he said, sir, you always have different ways of looking at things. I said, doesn't matter, just go have a chat with him. And then he came back the following day. He said, yes, I had a chat with him, and I think that will help me somewhere down the line, because he said, I caught on to what he said, and it'll help me at certain points in time. So you need to understand that because you happen to handle a side, you cannot be prevailing upon the players to come to you only for help. They could seek any source that they might feel is going to be beneficial for them. At the end of the day, it is their career. They obviously would do what they want to do in order to enhance and improve their life or their career or their technical skills. If they feel you're the person, they'll come to you. If they don't come to you, don't get upset with the player. That's not your job. Your job is not to go and get upset with the player because he's not come to you for help. You've not been given the role for that.
That's a great answer, sir. And with respect to leaders and them needing to have such influence, how much influence do you think our captains and obviously coaches have in deciding the nature of the test match wickets for the men's cricket team? Because we've seen how the nature of these pitches have changed from, say, early 2000s to mid 2000s to the post 2011-12 era. What do you think of the test match wickets for this WTC cycles in general? Because we are seeing a lot of games where we get results like the win or loss results, binary results, whereas in previous years we used to see a lot of draws.
What has happened in the recent past is that all the sides are playing to their strengths at home, and the percentage of victories is higher when they play at home. This has perhaps more or less become a trend in international cricket. Now, whether you want to criticize them or to try and say that they need to go abroad and win and not rest on their laurels that they build up playing at home under familiar conditions and winning, or you would say, okay, I'll take the result that they get at home. So you have to be very clear about what it is you want to see from your national side. At the same time, the sides resorting to playing on pitches that suit their team or their strength or the team composition is something that needs to be accepted and said, yes, that's the way it happens, and there's nothing much you can do about it. But therein lies the challenge. Now, it's not that teams resorted to playing on pitches that suited them at home now. It's always been the same. I've never heard of Lloyd's team playing on turning tracks in West Indies. I've never heard of an England side playing on a good flat track in England. There would always be green tops or maybe tracks where the ball really seemed quite a bit. This has been going on for the simple reason the characteristics of the pitches will always be dependent on the weather you get there, the kind of soil that you get there, the facilities that you have in terms of preserving the soil or to irrigate the soil. Depends on the facilities and the contraptions that you have and the weather that you have prevailing in a particular country. So this is something which is beyond your control. You cannot definitely fight nature and prevail over nature. That is my take on it. Yes, at times you might tend to feel that sites maybe indulge in doing a little bit excessive uh, dose of things, but that can't be helped. You can't always get it perfect. You can't always get it to the T. Sometimes it does become excessive. And that's the reason you see test matches getting over in 2.5 days at times. It's not restricted to India, it's not restricted to Australia, it's not restricted to South Africa. It happens everywhere.
Yeah, true, sir. I just want to take this next part of our podcast about coaching, about your coaching stint with the women's national team. So, looking back at it, how do you see the whole experience and how do you see the increased coverage on the sport as general? Like, do you feel more attention is still required to be given to them?
My taking up the role to coach the women's side was with a view to try and help them because I had seen them play, I had seen them perform extraordinarily well. And around 2018, start of 19, I felt that if they could have somebody with a bit of experience to help them, I felt that they would do a lot better than they were doing then. That is one of the reasons why I even said that I'll give it a go. As far as my tenure is concerned, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm sure that the girls also felt that I made some significant positive impact on them, on their cricket and on their uh, personality development and various other things that they need to perform at the international level. In terms of the popularity of women's cricket, it's always been there. It's just that people are getting to see it now. For the simple reason the WPL is started. Uh, the popularity was always there. The reason why I say this is because I remember in 2019 when that Challenger was played in Jaipur, there was a situation when the general election was there as well then. And that there what happened was that they had to restrict the number of people that could come into the stadium because the police could not manage controlling crowd here at the stadium and then going through to the various places where the election pockets were within that state. So one particular side of the ground was open to the public, which allowed 15,000 people to get into the stadium. Now, we get to hear much later, that is after the tournament is over on the way out the following morning, that there were another 15,000 waiting outside, asking the officials to open the other half of the stadium so that they could also come and watch. And apparently things got a little bit out of hand, and then a little bit of force had to be used to disperse the crowd from what we were told, which was rather unfortunate. And it was also an indication of the kind of popularity that women had in terms of them displaying their skills on a cricket field. People wanted to come and see. And there was no doubt in my mind at any stage after I saw personally what was happening when these girls played matches at home, that people will throng to the venue to see matches, and that was justified when the WPL happened.
Yeah.
And it will be only on the up and up in the future as well, because we saw some outstanding talent, we see some great athleticism, and we are even seeing the pace of playing increasing or improving in the last 2-3 years. The average scores in both 50 overs and 20 overs is going up. Obviously, it makes for a fantastic spectacle. Oh, okay, you may not see people bowling at 150 clicks per hour, but that is just not cricket. There are a lot more things to cricket than just somebody running in and bowling 150 clicks per hour.
Yeah, yeah. And just to add a sub question on that, how did you see the development of youngsters during your tenure?
It is not about their development. When we talk about the development youngsters, we must first try and come out of ourselves and see what is it that we are doing to facilitate their development. When I say we, I talk about everybody who's got some responsible position within the fraternity. It need not be at the BCCA level. It could be at the district level. A district association also has a secretary. It has a cricket in charge. So they all need to come out of themselves and see what it is that they are doing for the development of the talent of the youngsters who are keen to play a sport. And then they got to look at themselves in the mirror and try and assess the way they are functioning, and also uh, understand that they have a huge responsibility in terms of shaping the lives and careers of thousands of people with what they do during their tenure, because there is a spillover to what you do during your tenure. When you do something during your tenure as an official, you will obviously leave behind a legacy, and it will also have an impact in the future as well because of the decisions or the procedures you left behind. So it's imperative that everybody who's had a key position, regardless of whatever level of the ladder it is, they need to see how it is that they have performed during their tenure and what it is that they could have done better.
Yeah, let us continue with the WPL. What were your thoughts on the WPL that just concluded recently? You indicated a while ago about how an IPL style tournament for women would bring about a huge change in the sport in India. After the first WPL has concluded, we have seen how monstrous a success it has been. Like people have thronged to the venues, the viewership has skyrocketed on both streaming platforms and on TV. Do you think a 5-team IPL was the right choice, or do you think maybe more teams should have been there?
See, sometimes it's better to leave things as they are and then let it sort of settle down and then look forward to improving upon it. We should not be in a hurry to try and sort of get ahead of ourselves. That is what I would say when it comes to whatever it is that you're asking me about the WPL. Yes, it is there for all of us to see. It is going to be popular in the years to come. We've seen that there's a lot of talent. Yes. But what would be prudent is to just take it a little bit easy now. Next 2 years, let it go along these lines. What this would do is that in the intervening period, next 2 years or 3 years, you'll have a lot more girls taking up cricket. Then there comes a stage where you can say, yes, boss, we've had 5 for 3 years. Let's try and increase a team by a team, or let's have 2 more teams, because you have a lot more people, a lot more girls taking up to cricket. So at times you got to try and not get too excited. Wait for it to see how it pans out, whether it's stabilized or whether it's going to be a challenge to even have these 5 teams and succeed as well as we done in the first year. So not getting ahead of ourselves is also an art.
Yeah, true, sir. Yeah, and since we have been talking about women's cricket in detail, I wanted to touch upon the 50-over format of the game. While it is still paramount importance in the women's game, it's looking like it's losing its relevance in the men's game in recent years. Shane once famously said that if cricket had to go out of relevance, ODI format will be the first that will be getting affected. So why do you think such paradigm shift is happening? And we have seen for example, in football, where franchise culture is dominating more and the national team is being relegated to the sidelines. So with the advent of multiple leagues happening across the countries, can cricket also go in the same way in the future?
I think all these formats can coexist as long as there's no overdose of one particular format. Now, what's happening is that at this point in time, everybody thinks the 50 overs has lost its relevance. But given the overdose of the T20 cricket that you're getting now, how sure are you that it will not be cannibalized by a T10
Hmm.
tomorrow?
Very much.
Because look at the quantum of matches, T20 matches that are played across the globe in a year. You got leagues happening almost in every country. You got the T20 bilaterals happening. You got the World Cups happening. It's happening all over the place. And there is some talk of another new entrant coming into the fold in a big way. Now, where is this all going to end? At what point does it saturate? There is no saying for sure as to what will be the first one to lose its relevance or what will be the first one to walk into the sunset. It's just that the administrators need to try and make each format appealing enough, interesting enough. Yes, just to try and create a little bit of buzz or to try and rekindle interest, they can perhaps try and change a few things in the 50 overs for starters. They can make it a 40-over game. They can perhaps break it down into two innings and see how it pans out, or probably have just one ball from both ends to see if reverse swing is a factor. Then the middle overs may not be as monotonous as they seem to be now.
Hmm.
The problem is that because of this excitement that the T20 format provides, the 50 overs seem to be a bit of a slow burn, and it also appears that it's kind of boring in certain games, in certain situations. So try and see if you can have just one ball. If reverse swing becomes a factor, then the middle overs can get interesting because fast bowlers can really try and create a buzz, which is what is not happening now. The middle overs, especially, has a specific pattern,
Hmm.
and that's what is perhaps creating a bit of ennui for the viewers.
Yeah. And at both franchisee and national team levels, how does a coach decide on the tone and nature of communication with the fellow coaches? Like, does it depend on aids? Because sometimes senior professionals are in junior jobs, and junior pros like climb up the ladder pretty quick to senior jobs. For example, Steve McLaren the manager of Manchester United right now. He was the assistant manager to Steve McLaren in the Netherlands like 14 years ago. But right now, Steve McLaren is the assistant manager to Eric Ten Hag, who's the manager of Man United. So these kind of combinations won't work well unless the people are generally good with each other and in terms of understanding and the final goal that they want to achieve. So how do you see that, sir?
I said you'll have to have a pre-agreed upon channels of communication or
Yeah.
people who are going to communicate with each other. That is different from having a rigid hierarchy.
Yeah.
Rigid hierarchy is perhaps most of the time a detrimental way of doing things, as far as I'm concerned, and it's even more so in sports because you don't know what particular nuances of a sport the head coach might miss. Whereas somebody else might pick it up and might draw the attention of everybody else in the team to that particular thing that has been missed out on. So if you're going to stifle a junior most guy and say, no, this is something you can't talk about, no, you're not going to be a winning side. It should be open, yet what I mean by that is the communication is never going to be affected in a sports setup because of the stature or status of a person in a particular setup. It's not that a guy who's just a fielding coach cannot talk about what a bowler is not doing right. It doesn't work that way because let's face it, when you have 4 or 5 coaches, everybody knows cricket.
Hmm.
They've not been involved in other sports to come and to be here for others to say, no, you can't talk. It's not that they don't know cricket. They know cricket as well. But the important thing is that communication is all about timing it properly and saying the right things to the right person. Now, if you have somebody who doesn't like to be told anything during the course of a game, if I were to go and say things to that person, he's not going to take anything into his ears at all. It's not going to make any impact. Whereas if I know somebody wants all the time to be given a feedback, I must be, alert enough to pick that particular quality of that person and go and let him know that this is what needs to be done. See, that is the beauty about sport. You get people with different temperaments, with different mentalities, and with different ways of doing things. And that's how the coaches always uh, form that bond by understanding what it takes to make us, each and every individual, tick. That's the key job of coaching, to understand what really needs to be done with each and every player that you're handling.
So we are moving into a last two questions of this podcast episode. So over the years, you have been able to work in different walks of lives, and you must have encountered various charming personalities. So did you ever feel someone to become the ideal leader, but they never did? No, Bala and I always talk about how great a captain Shane Warne would have been if he was given the chance to lead Australian for a long term. People in sporting circles often say how he was the greatest Australian captain Australia could never have. So do you have anyone in mind who you also felt similarly?
I always felt that Ravi could have led in a lot more games for India, which is something that did not happen. Uh, and in the next gen, I felt that Ajay Jadeja was one who could have led a lot more, because he had those qualities in him. And if you come further down, I won't have any idea, because I've not personally interacted with them, or I've not played with them to know who would have been also in the same bracket as those two that I mentioned. But these two, for certainty, I can say that they could have led a lot more. But yes, it did not happen due to various reasons, and due to the different kinds of thought processes that existed in different generations in Indian cricket. But that's how it works out sometimes. But again, the fact of the matter is that even though Ravi did not lead a lot of matches that he should have, he at least had that leadership role as a coach for a long duration, which meant that it was not missed out. The Indian cricket did not miss out on that. And unfortunately, that was not the case with Jadeja. But still, as an analyst, he's still making a lot of people aware of the nuances of the game in his own way, with that charming smile of his. So, anyway, it's not completely lost out on, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It may not be, in Ravi's case, it is there straight away, it was available and in a key capacity. But again, even here, as an analyst on a television channel, you are no less influential.
Yeah. Yeah. As the final question, since you touched upon analysts and analysis, I wanted to ask about the usage of data in cricket. Not only in cricket, but we've seen data analysts and data analysis gain prominence across sports like football, basketball, etc. I feel that there should be a solid balance between data and the intangibles like instinct, leadership, and all the other qualities which we don't get through data. How do you feel about it also?
See, data analysis, data collection is all good. But it's a question of what it is that you do with the data, which is important. Yes, data can give you a lot of humongous details, but how relevant are they is very important, and that's something that somebody should take cognizance of. And also, does the data tell you details about a player's mindset, the player's ability to adapt, the player's attitude in a tense situation, his ability to handle pressure? Does it tell you? No. And also, what people must understand is there's a lot of matchups being spoken about. Yes, it is there for everybody to see. But the point is, in cricket, uh, what happens in the past need not necessarily happen today. If that were to be the case, Don Bradman would have comfortably had an average of excess of 100. because all the times most of the times he went out to bat, he got 100 minimum. But in his final innings, he got out to a naught, which data analyst would have predicted that zero.
No one would have been able to predict that.
Yes, we can take those things into cognizance. We can make use of them, but we cannot become absolutely dependent on just the cold numbers, because there are a lot of things that may not be available for you to see from the numbers alone. Cricket is generally, for example, is more of a judgmental call. Like a lot of selectors would have picked a guy based on seeing his talent. If you look at his numbers, no, it wouldn't match. If you went by numbers, there are a lot of cricketers you would not have picked. And if you had picked a lot of cricketers based on numbers, who knows what would have happened to them. So in Indian cricket, if you look at it, there are a lot of cricketers who have been picked based on somebody seeing them for 5 minutes. Like classic example is, I'm not suggesting you should copy what somebody else does in life. I'm saying, for example, Imran never picked at least about 4-5 of Pakistan's match winners by seeing the statistics and then the scores. He just saw them somewhere in the nets, he picked them, called them to the nets, so the Pakistan team picked them, and they went on to become great performers of Pakistan. I'm not saying blindly follow anybody. I'm saying, yes, data analysis and data analytics, yes, it can be a part, definitely, no doubt about it, but it cannot be the only part in cricket, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, sir. Great answer. And that comes to the end of our podcast episode. So Bala and I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed your answers, explanations, and got to know a few anecdotes along the way. So thanks for taking time. Thanks for agreeing to do this episode, sir. And we'll let you know once this episode comes out. And thanks again.
Thanks a lot. I enjoyed having a chat as well, and hope to see you do a lot more things than what you're doing currently, and wish you both the very best in the future as well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, take care.